Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of Wine Wednesday. And I hope you have already seen the previous weeks with Konstantin Guntram and Alessandra Bindi-Sagadi. They're online now at Viking.TV if you want to go and watch them. But today we've got an amazing show. We're doing two winemakers. We're doing two amazing winemakers from Austria. I chose Austria because of a Danube that flows through Austria, and many who've taken a Viking cruise will have gone past Wachau and through Wachau and would have gone past one of the wineries represented today, and many of you will have drunk wines from the other winery. Austria is a really interesting country. A lot of people compare Austrian wines to German wines. I think that's wrong. I think because the perception of German wines is sweeter wines, delicious, absolutely fantastic quality. Whereas Austria, although it comes in the same sort of shaped bottles, they're usually drier wines. And to me, Austria reminds me more of New Zealand, and I'll tell you why. In 1985, for instance, there were no wineries in New Zealand, and today New Zealand is a #3 exporter of wines to the USA, and they export wines to England and everywhere, and they're highly successful. And 65% of the wine produced in Austria is probably their own grape, called Grüne Veltliner, and it sort of reminds me of New Zealand had a one grape, they make other wines, Pinot Noirs, etc., but their one main focus grape is Sauvignon Blanc. So to me, the Grüne Veltliner is an amazing grape. Austria is the only place that really makes it significantly, and the quality is extraordinary. It sort of reminds me of New Zealand, but it's in the middle, so where if I'm doing an event and someone has a broad mixture of people, some people like Chardonnay, some people like Sauvignon Blanc, I always tell them to buy Grüne Veltliner because it's a crowd pleaser that everyone likes. Whether you like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to like Grüne Veltliner. Now, the two winemakers I have today, Markus Huber, who in the Jancis Robinson and Hugh Johnson's 7th most recent edition of their wine atlas, describes Markus Huber as one of the most admired winemakers in Austria, and certainly he actually recently was named the top winemaker in Austria. And actually, very funnily, in the book they describe him as Markus Huber von Reichendorf, but actually Reichendorf is where the village he lives in, so they've mistaken his town for an extra surname that makes him sound very grand. But he is fun and probably very grand, but very down to earth and normal. So it's just Markus Huber. And then we have Erich Machherndl, who is in the Wachau, and Wachau is the most famous wine producing region of Austria. And Erich's winery is so small that I would be surprised if anyone watching this today has actually tasted the wine unless they've heard about this show from us. But it's kind of like a diamond producer. There aren't very many. Erich's wines are superb quality, as good as you get. For me, the best wines in the Wachau. So without further ado, let's bring on Erich and Markus. Hey guys.
Hello. Hello, good evening.
So, was that a fair introduction?
Well done, thanks.
Good. Well, listen, because some people, most people who are watching Viking TV are very educated, certainly traveled and geographically knowledgeable, but you may have some people who might not know the difference between Austria and Australia. So we're going to start off with a couple of maps. We're going to first of all show a map of the Danube. James Rismall, as usual, is the behind-the-scenes genius who's going to bring up the maps and other visuals. And you can see here the map of Austria, and you can see where it's surrounded by. It's the Danube is a river which is indicated on the red here, and actually Viking does a map of a trip which is called the Sojourn Viking cruise, which is from Amsterdam to Bucharest. It's 23 days long, but you can see this is the route which goes into the Danube and goes to Bucharest, eventually going out in the Black Sea. You can see that it's surrounded by Hungary, Austria, Croatia, Germany. Markus and Erich, tell us a little bit more about your country.
Okay, I take it, and I will start with. My name is Markus Huber. I'm pleased to be here tonight. And a few things about Austria. I mean, to give you an idea, Austria has only 8 million people who live here. So it's basically the size of New York City in terms of population. And it's a beautiful country with a lot of mountains. It's famous for its skiing regions, but it's also famous for culture, for classical music, for instance. And wine has a very long history here in Austria. There are grape seeds found which are dating back more than 4,000 years here in the Danube area. And this all documents the tradition of winemaking in Austria. Maybe Erich wants to contribute something?
I'm fine so far.
Erich, you're the one who's located on the Danube. Let's just see a map of the wine regions of Austria, and you can talk us a little bit about that. Here we go.
Okay, just about the river Danube. The river Danube is, I think it's the second longest river in Europe. I think just the Volga is longer. It's almost 3,000 kilometers of river. And in Austria, there are 6 wine growing areas located on the river Danube. It's not just the Wachau, it's Kremstal, it's Donauland, it's Vienna, I think it's Carnuntum. What else? Something's missing, but it's the river has a big influence for wine growing. In terms of climate, late frost, and so on. Yeah, and the Danube is connecting 10 countries. That's what you've mentioned before.
10 countries the Danube goes through. That's amazing. And most of the wine production is white wine in the north, but you make quite a lot of red wine in the south, I believe.
That's true.
More in the east.
And the east.
Southeast,
yeah.
And was I correct in saying that Grüne Veltliner is 65% of production of Austria?
No, this is wrong. Sorry, it's 65% in the Traisental, where I come from. It's about 36% for the whole country. So it's about 1/3 what we produce.
Yeah. Okay.
But in terms of white, pardon me. In terms of white wine, it might be more than 36%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine in the Wachau it's a lot more than. This must be closer to the. Isn't it closer to the production of Traisental?
In the Wachau, I would say it's 50 up to 55% of the wines produced are Grüne Veltliner.
Let's just Erich, do you see Viking ships going past your winery?
Of course. Right now I'm sitting about 30 meters next to the river Danube. So I used to be the 4th house in my village getting flooded whenever the river comes. So I'm really close to the river and I can see the Viking boats passing by.
You are 13 meters from the river, did you say?
30. 30 meters from the river. So I'm pretty close to the river Danube.
And there's a road that goes between you and the river, I think.
There's just a small road and a parking place, and that's it. And then it's the river Danube.
Well, that's fun to see those boats, or ships, I should say. They're Viking ships. And I think let's just get a little bit more of a feel for the region. I think, Erich, you sent a beautiful picture of a photograph with fireworks. Can you, what's going on there?
This is a firework in summer. It's when day and night have the same length. It's Sonnenwende, solstice, whatever its English term.
Solstice.
Solstice. Thanks. And this is this year was June 23rd, I guess. And on the right side of the picture, you can see the river boats. These are the illuminated boats on the right side passing by. That's, I think it's a number of 25 up to 30 river boats or ships passing by on that day, just joining the fireworks, and famous buildings are illuminated. So it's a nice place to be. And
is that clever photoshopping or your Machherndl?
No.
No. How do you do that?
This picture has been taken in 2014. I had the idea to use candles to bring my logo on my steepest vineyard, because whenever someone is illuminating his house or a castle or whatever, I said, come on, let's burn my logo. And we've been talking about the smart guy who made the video from Markus. The same guy was giving me a hand to bring my logo on the hillside. Finally ended up in hospital, but it was worth.
Why? What happened?
Burned my skin a bit.
That's very fun. Well, not so funny, because a lot of probably don't have the problem with, you couldn't do that in California with the wildfires going on.
In some years, when we're suffering from a drought, we have no permission to have fireworks or candles. So that's just in, I think in 19, they had a firework, 1817 was forbidden, and 16 there was a firework too. So it depends.
Wow. And you mentioned a castle. I think of the Danube, and actually, yeah, the Danube, I think of castles when I think of the Danube. And I think we've got a picture of, I think, is this the Dürnstein castle that's coming up?
No, this is Spitz, Hinterhaus.
Ah.
So there are plenty of castles. It's a real large number.
Probably the most famous one must be the Dürnstein line, where Richard the Lionheart was imprisoned, right?
Yeah, you got it. But this is the church of Spitz, and right when we had the image before, right on the left side of the castle, maybe 5 kilometers to go, that's the end of the wine growing area of Wachau. So that's the west end of the Wachau Valley.
One of the first questions we got was someone called Aubrey in Colchester, and she said, is there a rivalry among the various wine villages in this area?
I wouldn't say no, but it's, I'm not sure whether I got the question right, but it's we have plenty of old villages, and it's an old area. So Wachau, we don't have seed from 3,000 years ago, but the Wachau Valley was first mentioned maybe in 800. So, but people live here since the Stone Age. So we got maybe the most known thing is the Venus from Willendorf, which is was mentioned to be built 25,000 BC, not AC, BC. So it's a long time. So yeah, That's my vineyard.
I get that's your vineyard. I guess we could actually make that question a little bit more interesting and talk about you two. The Wachau is only makes about 3% of Austrian wine, but it's the most sort of I want to say prestigious wine region. But then Markus might say, well, the Traisental makes amazing wine as well, which it does, and he's been named winemaker of the year, and actually has one of his wines in the top 100 wines right now. And I think, is it Wine Spectator or Wine
Enthusiast?
Wine Enthusiast. Sorry. So how would you compare your region style wine styles? We're going to obviously taste them a little bit later, but you both make Grüne Veltliner. So what's the difference between them that you would say?
I think the main difference is that in the Traisental area we have a different geology because we are on the southern bank of the Danube. We are bordering the Danube in the north of the region, and the Traisental Valley is located from north to south, and it stretches towards the Alps. And the whole the mother rock in our area, the soil is everywhere dominated by limestone, and the Wachau on the other side is on a different geology, and it's mainly primary rock. So these are two completely different soil components. And this, of course, describes the difference in the wines a lot.
And whereas in the Wachau, I think it's sort of really the north-south climates meeting together, and you have a lot more soil types. Is that correct?
Soil types, it's not easy to talk in general. The different types of soil from the west to the east. We have a big influence of the Pannonian climate from the east, but we have cool and wet winds from the north and the south, causing permanent circulation of air. And this is and the Wachau Valley could be divided maybe in 3 different zones. So it's the hottest spot in the east, the moderate part in the middle, and the cool spot on the west and the north. So it's not just the Wachau. It depends. It's
okay.
As always, it's not an easy question.
Let's just look at a few more pictures. We saw a couple of pictures of your vineyards, I think, Erich. And do we have more pictures of vineyards coming up? Is James there? There we are. Is that who's that one?
This is a picture of the vineyards in the Traisental. You can see it looks a little bit like Burgundy. You have on the top of the hill you have a forest, then you have the vineyards, and below the vineyards, where you can see the fog and the clouds, there are the villages located. So all the vineyards are also on hillside with different grade, between 10 and 40% incline. So sometimes in terraces where it's steeper, and where it's not so steep, they're in vertical planting.
And I think this is another one, right?
This is another one, yeah. This is on the hill, one of the rolling hills, yeah, here in the Traisental.
These are Grüne Veltliner vines?
Yeah, old Grüne Veltliner wines, so more than 60 years old.
So, which leads me on to a question. Erich, your winery, you've been around since 1786, and the Huber winery's been around since 1648. But I sort of think of you two both as being new wineries, and it's more like the Rhone Valley type of thing that's happened and Burgundy, where the younger generation has taken over from the parents and have been much more interested in producing wine under their own labels. And tell us how you both evolved and became winemakers, and what your families were doing before you both became winemakers.
Who wants to start, Markus?
Okay, so Like I think it's the case for Erich's family and my family. I mean, most people here, they were small and poor farmers, you know, and people were farming regular agriculture. They had a little bit of forest, and they had maybe 1 or 2 vineyards, and so they made a little bit of wine. But in our family, for instance, when we started out in 1648, the main income for my family was to have a cooperage to produce barrels. And over the time, over the different generations, you know, they accumulated small parcels of vineyards. And even still until my grandfather, we only have had 3 hectares. And of course, like in my case, and also I think in Erich's case, we were the first generations who really focused exclusively on making wine, you know, because, for instance, in our case, my father, we had a mixed agriculture. We had a small restaurant called a Heuriger, where we sold the majority of the wine we produced, but we also fed our own pigs and chicken, and we slaughtered them, and we made and we prepared the food for the restaurants from those animals. So it was really like what you would call a farm-to-table restaurant type of thing. And yeah, I decided to focus on winemaking exclusively and try to make that little small restaurant kind of thing to turn it into a winery. And this is the case for many wineries in Austria.
Did you go to a winemaking school, or did you learn it from your father, or?
Both. I mean, I had to practice with my grandfather and my father. There was no question. And then I went to a federal college for wine growing in Klosterneuburg near Vienna.
And Erich, how about you?
Something different, something completely different, maybe. We own the house since 1786, and the estate is even way older. So the estate is from the 13th century. So the first Machherndl in the house, his name was Johann Machherndl, married a Weichselbaum back in 1785, and that's the way we came on the estate. Probably the cheapest way by marriage, but yeah, okay. Now we've got the winery, and it was my grandfather already focusing on just wine growing. Of course, before the mixed agriculture with whatever was necessary for life. But my grandfather focused on wine, and my father did a really good job. And my father was probably maybe the better winemaker than I am, but I do a different style, and I'm feeling very comfortable with whatever I'm doing. And I was supposed to go to the same federal college in Klosterneuburg like Markus, but I was born in 1972, so I was supposed to go to this college in 1986, which was the year right after the wine scandal in Austria. So there was not a good promise about wine business in Austria, and my parents decided, okay, son, learn something different. So I changed school, went to Vienna, became a medical engineer, was working in the medical business for maybe 8 years. And then my father retired in 1989, and he said, okay, son, do whatever you want to. Take it, rent it, sell it, I don't care. And I said, okay, I take it. I don't know why. I went back to school to get all the knowledge needed for becoming a wine grower. But honestly, most of the things I've heard in school were less important than what my father has taught me. So it's just, I like the style of the wines from my father, and they're still, wow, hilarious wines, even from the 70s or even older. So, but what I did was just to refine my father's way of winemaking and kind of trial and error in the 20 years I'm making wine now. And whatever came up, I like whatever I've improved.
The funny thing is, I've known you probably close to 20 years, and I haven't seen any of your errors. So what do you do with the errors if you have trial and error?
I drink them by myself.
You both have old vineyards. What are your oldest vines that you each have?
was running out of the 60s because we planted that vineyard 2 years ago. So my oldest vineyard now is 52, maybe. Yeah, it's 52.
Markus?
We have one small parcel which is more than 80 years old, but we don't know exactly how much. And then we have a couple of vineyards which are planted in the 50s, because after the Second World War, a lot of the vineyards were destroyed. And this was the time when a lot of them was replanted. So there, we have a couple of vineyards planted in the 50s.
And Markus, your winery, your wine production has grown enormously under your watch. So have you bought more land, or do you buy grapes, or what happens?
Both. I was in the comfortable situation to when the winery was growing to buy land when I could afford it, but this was what was actually not the case so often. So I developed a good model with local grape suppliers where we could buy the grapes and have long-term leases with them, sometimes for the land.
Let's see. We've got a couple more pictures of your vineyards, I believe, that we haven't seen. I think one of them shows clouds in the coming into the or fog. You must have a lot of. Do you have problems with frost and stuff like that? There you go.
Yeah, sometimes in some years spring frost, but fog is a pretty common thing in the fall. So
yeah,
it's
beautiful. And let's keep going.
Yeah, we have seen them. Yeah,
and then what's that? A close up?
That's my father, not a vineyard.
Oh, we're on. Yes, that's your father. Is he still alive?
He's still alive. He's turning 83 next January and still working in the company.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then the next picture is of, I think, of your wife and.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty old. Oh my gosh. Next one, please. Yeah, next generation. That's my son Lawrence.
How old is he now?
8.
Your only son?
Yep.
Yeah, that you know of. And then this is your cellar?
That's a pretty old barrel cellar from, I think this one is from 1830. This was the son from Erich Machherndl, Matthias, building parts of the cellar.
So what percentage of your wine goes into barrels, and do you use new oak or old oak? Obviously both.
I don't use new oak. I'm always on the seek for used oaks from good wineries, because I don't like it when wines, when I have to have a closer look on my wines and just be sure there's not too much oak, whether it's 1.5 months or 2 years. I'm pretty chilled in my cellar, so I like old oak. I would prefer old oak.
Do you use stainless steel at all?
It's mainly stainless steel, yeah, because of the style of wine I prefer. I like a lean style of wine that's easier to achieve with stainless steel wise.
I think let's go on to the next picture. I think is that's you, Markus, isn't it?
Obviously, yeah.
And then a much more pleasant picture. There you are.
Yeah, this is my family. Yeah.
And how are your children now? How old are they?
They are 17, 13, and 5.
Wow, fantastic! You've got a handful.
Yeah.
And then that's your brother.
Yes, my brother Michael. Yes, he's also working in the winery, and he's doing together with me. But now, actually, the majority of the winemaking is done by him.
I was very annoyed once. I was with him in Mississippi pouring wine at a table, and extremely pretty girl came up and started talking to him, and I started talking to her, and then she asked me if I was his father, which was really insulting in one way, but on the other hand, he's a good-looking lad, so if my son...
Okay.
I think we're going to show a quick video. It's a lovely video. You won I think this is a video from Markus that you've sent in, and you won an award for this video. What was the award?
I don't know. It was an award in Austria for the best animated video, natural animated video.
Okay, let's have a look at it. It gives a nice idea of your family.
Yeah.
Wines. Well, that was a spectacularly beautiful video, and I'm glad you won an award for that. Well deserved. One of the questions I was going to ask you next is what inspires you, but having seen that video, it's pretty obvious what inspires you. It's just the beauty of the land that you both live in, and other things. What else inspires you, and we want to talk about your philosophies and organic farming. I think almost all the wines in Wachau are organic, aren't they? And
no, just a small part.
Small part, okay. Markus, what inspires you, and what's your philosophy in winemaking?
The philosophy is just to transfer the purity of the soil we have and the climate. We have a very cool climate here because it's influenced by the Alps. To transfer that into the glass without a lot of influence. So, for instance, we don't do any detectable wood use. nor do we do any malolactic fermentation or something like this. So we just want to keep that pure, fresh, crisp style of white wine into the bottle. And of course, as you said, we live in a really beautiful country, in a beautiful, healthy environment. And this is, of course, a pleasure and a heritage to live here and to maybe continue with this for the next coming generations.
We're going to taste your wines in a little bit, but we're going to taste some Machherndl first. I know that, Erich, am I correct in thinking that all your wines are vegan with no fining except protein and stabilization, minimal sulfur, herbicides have not been used since 2008. Is that all correct?
Yeah, we stopped herbicides back in 2007, but it's fine so far, yeah.
And you're certified organic vineyards, aren't you?
Yeah, we moved to organic back in 2015. So the first certified organic vintage was 2018.
Fantastic. So tell us, we're going to taste two wines, and back in the studio, everyone was confused between Kolmütz and Kolmitz. We're going to taste the Ried Kolmütz first. What is Ried? Tell us what Ried is. And I gather they're two hills, but you'll have to.
I agree. That's totally confusing, but it's trust me, it's not my fault. We have a map here from 1820, and already then we had Kolmütz and Kolmitz. I can't explain why behind Joching, this is, there are two separate hills. Kolmütz is behind my village, Bösendorf, and behind Joching is Kolmitz. Sounds equally, but they are different in terms of soil, but almost the same height. And Kolmütz is a bit steeper, has more gneiss, and just on the bottom some Isles of Löss. There are plenty of slopes built with stone walls on the Kolmütz, where the picture of a vineyard before with the slopes. And the Kolmitz is way more Löss. We have gravel, we have gneiss, and on top we have sea sediments. So that's yeah. And then, as I mentioned before, it's not so easy to explain. But then now we start with the Grüne Veltliner Federspiel from the Ried Kolmütz. Yeah, so we should explain to viewers that there are three styles of wine in Wachau. There's Steinfelder, which is less than 11.5% alcohol. Then there's Federspiel, which is 11.5 to 12.5% alcohol. And then there's Smaragd, which is more than 12.5% alcohol. And I gather you sometimes in Wachau, wines can go as high as 15% alcohol, which is not what you really think of as old world white wines from Austria. There is no upper limit for Smaragd category wines. There's a minimum amount of sugar content. It has to be 90 degrees Oechsle, and the minimum amount of alcohol, which is 12.5. So when you achieve the requirements, go for it. But there's something new coming with vintage 2020. We are now becoming a DAC region in Austria too. So now we have Wachau DAC as well, like Steinfeder, Federspiel, and Smaragd. So maybe in the near future I need bigger labels just to get all the information done. Right. That's very confusing, but it's good. The wine geeks will love all that. So we're going to look at a couple more pictures to give people time to open their bottles, which are not too hard because they're screw tops, and to pour the wines. Let's see a couple of pictures. Oh, okay, we'll go to that. So this is the first wine we're going to taste today, and it's got a beautiful. It's got a lemony color, but it's got a touch of lime to it on the color. And on the nose, it's amazingly aromatic. Now I'm drinking the 2017. These wines Grüne Veltliners can age extremely well.
And which one are you drinking? Are you drinking the current vintage 19, or are you drinking the same vintage?
I've been looking for an equal vintage, and I'm completely out of stock of 17. And the first ripened bottle I found was 2011. So nothing else in between in my cellar. But I don't know whether you can see this really. Oh my gosh, it's hard to. You can see
2011
the label. It's disgusting, yeah. It's 11, yeah, but it's still young.
Yeah, still young.
That's
a lot of people don't know that white wines usually age longer than red wines. I mean, Riesling is the longest white wine in the world, but great white Burgundies are known for aging, and I think the Grüne Veltliner has a very similar aging and lifestyle as great white Burgundies.
Oh, of course, but always depending on vintage and the way of winemaking. That's kind of a reason why I do my wines that way, and they can last for 20 or even more years.
Yeah, so you're drinking 2011, I'm drinking 2017. If someone wants to buy a bottle of your wine, it's probably going to be 2019.
2019, yeah.
And they're all great. It doesn't really, I highly recommend, whether it's a younger one or an older one, just buy whatever you can, because it's fabulous. The length is amazing. And what would you serve this as food-wise?
I'm Austrian, and Grüne Veltliner is always a perfect match for an Austrian. So everything coming behind breakfast is fine for Grüne Veltliner. So there's no certain dish or some recommended dish, but it's doing really well. It's no matter whatever you have on.
Yeah, I agree. It's that perfect. As I was saying earlier, if you like Chardonnay, you're going to like this because it's got that body, that richness. And if you like Sauvignon Blanc, it's got that acidity, and it's just a perfect sort of everything wine that you'll enjoy.
17 was really, really hot and bone dry vintage. So we had just about 200 liters of rainfalls per year. In 17, we were suffering from a drought, honestly, and it was a rough vintage, but I like the result. And 17 is doing well yet. It's I think it's kind of perfectly balanced. It's really astonishing long aftertaste. And
no, it is. You're right. And what makes, I think it's that makes this wine a great wine as opposed to a good wine. This is a wine that would go with the finest dinner party, even though it's not that expensive, I don't think, but it's a wine that is exceptional quality. And I do honestly say that I think Machherndl is as good as you get from Wachau. The length is superb, and it's got a rich and a nice sort of oily weight to it, oily character, and it's simply superb. Should we go on to the second wine?
Yep.
This one I've actually chosen a 2015 from my cellar.
Yep. I got a tank sample from 2015 as well.
Fantastic. When you bottle a tank sample, is that does that hold up as well as when you have a regular?
I will see. That's the only bottle left from that vintage. I think it's a bottle I've kept from the Pro wine, so it's a Pro wine leftover.
So the previous one was 12% alcohol for a Spederspiel, and this is a Smaragd, which is 13.5% alcohol.
Which was pretty low for that vintage. 15 was, 17, 15, 13 were all really hot vintages, and sometimes wineries achieved alcohol levels up to 15 or 16% alcohol. But I'm not using cultivated yeast. Maybe that's the reason why I have this lower amount of alcohol in my wines. I don't know.
So usually you do not use cultivated yeast?
No, I don't.
Natural yeast. So this one, why did you use cultivated in this one?
No, I didn't use cultivated yeast.
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry.
Just all spontaneously.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All spontaneous fermentation.
Right.
So no cultivated yeast in my cellar.
Good. I didn't think so. Totally natural. And this has a sort of a little bit of a lychee character, and it's still got that beautiful oily, rich texture. You could be mistaken for thinking this is a little bit sweet, but it's actually fruit. It's just incredibly intense, beautiful fruit.
This is dry as well. I think it's maybe 3 grams per liter. It's I don't know exactly yet, but it's really dry.
Yeah, it's bone dry, but it's got the sort of texture that of a richer wine.
My wines are doing well with aging. That's the final clue.
I'm very excited to taste those wines. They are really spectacular.
But you can taste the difference all. It's Kolmütz. It's more spicy than the Kolmütz.
Yeah. Markus, I'm sorry you're not. We should have sent you bottles to taste.
But I know them, it's fine. So, but it makes my mouth watering already.
I tell you, these wines are just spectacular. They're world class. There's no question about that. But how much of those do you make on average a year?
Oh, the Kolmütz is more or less my signature dish and my entry-level wine. So this is maybe 1/3 of my production, which means in a bad vintage, 10,000 bottles. In a good vintage, 18,000 bottles or 20,000.
That's so 10,000 bottles is basically 833 cases.
In bad vintages. In good vintages is 20,000 bottles.
So 1,600. So you are really classified as a micro winery. You're extremely high quality, purely quality focus, and very, very hard to find, I imagine. Can they order the wines from you directly in the winery, or how do people find you?
We're living in 2020, so we do all kinds of business.
Right. Probably go to winesearcher.com. It's the easiest way.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, if the Viking wine sellers wanted to have your wine on their ships, would you allocate a few cases to them?
Of course.
This is why we wanted you on the show, so that we could get some of your very hard to get wine.
I'm on. Thanks a lot.
Markus, I think we saw a picture of Erich's wine cellar, very old cellar earlier. Now, I think the next picture we're going to show is a picture of your wine cellar, I think.
We'll see. Yep.
The interesting thing about this is several things. You have large barrels, you have stainless steel, and you have that very fashionable egg in the background. So, and do you have old barrels too? Tell us a little bit about how you use all these aging and winemaking vessels.
So basically, the classical wines, they all are made in stainless steel. But then we have a lot of single vineyard Grüne Veltliner and Rieslings, classified Erste Lager wines like Premier Cruise, and those we put into the large traditional casks. And you can see, as you saw on the picture, some of them are relatively new. So the newest one is like 5 years old now, but the oldest one we have in use is from the 1950s, which you can see further at the back. And the concrete egg, which you can see right at the end, at the back of the picture, this is just something which we use. We make one natural wine, a skin fermented Grüne Veltliner, and this is done in the concrete egg, the fermentation and the storage.
Is that the one you put in the ceramic bottle?
Correct, yeah.
Do you have a picture of that? Because we actually have a question about that.
I don't have, I have the bottle here. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it. And
here you can see it. It's bottled in a ceramic bottle. And the wine is called Metamorphosis because it, during the time in the vessel, in the concrete egg, it's like the metamorphosis of a butterfly. You know, it's changing constantly, and that's why we called it like this.
Well, it actually brings up a really good question from Paul Harvey Brooks, who's a very influential person in the world of sort of gardening and botany and stuff. He asks, because he's got one of those bottles, and he's in Bourset, France, and he said the stone bottle looks interesting. So I guess my question is, why are some bottles glass or stone, and why green and clear, and also the neck of bottle is different? I'll just say that historically the colors of bottles of green and brown bottles reflected the earth from which the glass was made, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that question.
I mean, the ceramic bottle, you know, this is I wouldn't call it a new thing, because like hundreds of years ago, maybe this was before the invention of glass, it was the common thing where the wine was stored. But nowadays it's you can get them again. I mean, of course, they're much more expensive, but I think for natural wines they are a very good choice, because it gives the consumer immediately also the impression that there is something different in the bottle, you know, than just put a natural wine into a regular glass bottle.
We only saw one egg. Do you only make one egg's worth of natural wine, or?
Now we have two, and we put a little bit also in the traditional cask.
That's cool. I think the next image we have to show is a piece of soil, a rock from your vineyard. Tell us about that.
This is the main soil we have in the Traisental. I told you about the limestone, and this is one of those limestone rocks. And in this case, it's a very specific limestone. It's red colored because there is a lot of iron and manganese in the soil. And geologically, this falls into the dolomite fraction. So it's a special kind of limestone, which is taken from our top vineyard from the Berg.
All your wines are vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free. The winery is sustainable, certified sustainable. I think you've been organic with the 29 vintage and been farming organically since 2017.
Correct.
What made you go this direction of making more natural wines?
We don't make a lot of natural wines, but of course our approach is to farm as natural as possible. And since we have, I mean, for Austria we are a medium-sized winery, but in total we have 128 different parcels. And for me, always to make the way to organic farming was to make no compromise in the final wine quality, and therefore this was a process. We started the first trials with organic farming in 2008, and in 2016 we felt pretty confident to make the conversion on the full estate, and then we signed a contract where we have to actually officially apply to become an organic farmer, and ever since then we farm organically. And I think in the long run this is really the right decision.
And I have a bottle here that I think is your first 100% organic wine. Is that correct?
Correct, because and it's named Vision because it was the vision for us, a long-term vision, you know, to change our estate completely to organic farming, and with the 19 vintage we achieved that.
And this replaces a line of wine that you used to sell called Hugo.
Correct, yeah. Correct.
And this rather fun story about this label, I believe it's the iris of your wife or something?
That's true, yeah.
That's fantastic. How did you take that picture?
It was taken at a special Photoshop. You can make a special picture and then we put it on the computer, yeah, basically.
Ah, that's amazing. I think we have some lovely pictures of the cool. There we are. Tell us. These are your vineyards, right?
No, this is Wachau, I guess.
Oh, that's Wachau. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm wrong.
Also Wachau.
That's mine too.
But you're both cool climate. Well, yours is, yeah. And that picture is amazing because it really shows the rolling.
Yeah, these are some of our vineyards, and yeah, again you can see the fog, which is pretty common here during the harvest season.
Yeah, I guess I was comparing. The reason we had that other picture before this one was to compare the two
landscapes.
And what are the effects of global warming on both of you guys?
Of course, it's affecting us, but for us, to be honest, we are getting into a sweet spot right now, or we are in a sweet spot, because in the past, until 30, 40 years ago, the Traisental was an extremely cool climate where, even for the white wines, I'm not speaking about the red wines, in some years it was really hard to get the grapes ripe. And with global warming, of course, we have seen it, but even nowadays we are one of the coolest growing areas in Austria, and for us we just get a perfect ripeness every year, but with still bright acidity and freshness in the wines, and actually so far so good, you know. But of course, if this continues, it's going to be challenging in the future.
I have a very funny question that just came in from, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Mieke, M-I-E-K-E, from Montclair in the United States. And she says, I was on the Viking cruise on the Danube, but I never saw these two good-looking wine growers. I am 89 years old and I have to go again. Well, well, I think she's got a good eye. Certainly, my niece said to me earlier today when I was talking to her, she said, can I find her a good-looking winemaker? And I said, well, you should watch this program because you'll find two of them. But I don't know if you're available. You're both married, so probably not. But I think if you went on, if Mieke went back on a cruise and came to the Wachau, you would both go and meet her there, wouldn't you?
Yes, and there's plenty of good-looking men in Austria. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess it's all in the eye of a beholder.
Yeah.
So, I've got a lovely picture next. Paul Harvey Brooks just sent us a picture of himself posing with the bottles, which is really fun. Cheers to him. He's joining us at home. And anyone watching this show, if you have pictures of yourselves with the bottles of these wines, we would love to see them. You can simply tag us on Facebook at Viking Cruises UK, or for the US at Viking Cruises. Go to the social media page, and you can put up pictures of yourselves with the bottles, not just for this show, but for all the Wine Wednesday sessions. We'd love to see them. By the way, next week is Veterans Day on Wednesday, so we're skipping a week, so we will not be here on Wednesday next week. Let's get on and taste And Paul, thanks so much for sending that picture of you. It's really fun to see, and we know that you're watching every one of these shows, so we appreciate that. Thank you. Let's taste the next wine. It's going to be Markus's Grüner Veltliner Terrassen. You make a lot of different wines. Tell us about the Terrassen. And this is from Traisental. It's 12% alcohol. And you can tell us that whilst we pour ourselves a glass.
Yeah, so the Grüner Veltliner Terrassen is basically our estate wine, which we source from all the different vineyards from our estate, which don't go into the single vineyard bottlings. So the age of the wines we use for this wine is between 10 years are the youngest vineyards, and 65 years are the oldest parcels. And it's a really good representative of the style of the Traisental. It is a cutting-edge, fruit-driven, crisp style of Grüner Veltliner, which you easily can drink every day without food, with no food. It's just a nice glass of white wine.
Okay, this is getting a bit silly. Dawn from Grosse Pointe says 2 of the ladies in Viking.TV also like these guys. Very funny. Let me taste your wine, this Terrassen. This is something that I would pop open for a weekend lunch out on the veranda. It's just a beautiful summery wine. But also I can imagine this with turkey for Thanksgiving. It'd be a really good Thanksgiving wine.
Yeah. You said something really, which is really true, Bartholomew, at the beginning. I think Grüner Veltliner is an extreme good crowd pleaser. You can throw the wine in, not just our every Grüner Veltliner at a party, and most people will like it because it has that hint of good fruit, of aromatic. It has a good spicy backbone. It has depth. It has length, like a Chardonnay. It's really an extremely good wine for a wider crowd.
Yes, I agree. What other grapes do you grow? You grow. I know that you're making a Pinot Noir, which we'll bring in at some point into the US. I wasn't quite ready for it recently, but I think we'll take another look at that. Because it's exciting, the strides you're making with red wines and Pinot Noir.
Yeah, since we have the limestone soils and the cool climate, the Pinot Noir does well as well in our area, but it's a small proportion of the production. So the 2 main grapes are Grüner Veltliner and Riesling, and these 2, they count for about 75 to 80% of the production. Then we make some rosé, like a cool climate rosé wines, and a little bit of Pinot Blanc and a dry Muscat and a Sauvignon Blanc. So it's not that many varieties, but for instance, we have 5 different single vineyard Grüner Veltliners from the different crus, you know. So in total, we have like 7 Grüner Veltliners on the estate.
And just on this, before we leave the Terrassen, mine is 1918. Which one were you drinking?
I have the 2019 as well.
2019, mine's 2018.
2018, okay. Yeah.
How do you feel this wine ages? The other 2, Markus's, Erich's wines were evolved because of age. Do you feel the Terrassen's aged well, or would you advise another wine of yours to put in the cellar for aging?
Of course, I mean, since this is our estate wine, I think it's meant to be drunk within the first 5 years, but this is something which people can keep in mind. Grüner Veltliner, there is no stress even at the entry level, because these wines, most of the time, they taste better in the 2nd or 3rd year anyways, since they come from a cool climate and they are fresh and vibrant, and so there is no stress to drink them immediately.
I'm going to read a couple more comments. Julian in Boca Raton, Florida. Fantastic, Markus and Erich are wonderful. Thank you for telling us about your wines. Elise from New York, she says, what a great episode. Thank you, Bartholomew. Do any of Markus's or Erich's children show an interest in filling in your footsteps?
So I mean, as I said, my oldest daughter is 17 now. I mean, there is not a serious interest that she's saying, "Hey, Dad, I want to continue with the winery." But who knows? You know, I mean, they are still way too young, I think, to make that decision, and especially the younger two. And I don't know how the situation is with Erich's son.
How about you, Erich?
I'm never gonna force him because I had the free will, so I didn't want to become a winemaker, and finally ended up as a winemaker with a free will. And I'm not pushing my son. Whenever he wants to, it's fine, but when not.
Do you
look at my father? He turned 83 and still have a couple of years left to work.
Erich, how old did you say your son was?
8.
8. And do your children taste wines?
Mine does, and he's very critic. He...
How about you, Markus?
My daughters too, especially the young one, the 5-year-old one. She likes the taste of wine. You know, whenever we allow her to take a little tiny sip, she says, "Oh, can I have some more?" So it's really funny.
Just a quick question here from Nancy in Leeward, United States. Stainless steel is a relatively new invention. What kind of containers were used to ferment the wines before that?
Like traditional casks, yeah, like the big fruiters you saw on the pictures before, either oak casks or acacia casks. These were the two common used wood vessels in Austria.
So you didn't use concrete in Austria?
In the 50s we had concrete.
Yeah, in between, yeah.
Concrete.
Okay. And then another one is from Amparo in Solvang. This is a fun question. What are your thoughts on New World wines? I live in a wine growing region of the United States made rather famous by the film Sideways, and was wondering how you would compare New World to Old World.
I think, to be honest, there is good winemaking in almost any part of the world. No matter if it's New World or Old World, it always has to do with the knowledge about an area and with the passion which is put into the winemaking process. And this is not a question of where it comes from. You know, if it comes from New Zealand, from Australia, America, or wherever, it's the passion and the knowledge about the place, and of course also the historical knowledge about the wine region. You know, all these together can result in really good wines globally.
Great. And Erich, do you want to add to that?
I have to agree, but it's the big surprise for me is that, especially from the New World area, there's a large number of new freaky stuff coming up, which is extraordinary and surprisingly good and fresh and low in alcohol and spicy and precise like hell. So it's just, yeah.
I'd like to just add a little comment to that, in that today I feel that New World and Old Wine World, the definition has become blurred because, you know, places like South Africa and Chile and Argentina are considered New World, but actually they're very old wine producing regions. And to me, New World and Old World today defines a style rather than a wine, particularly with red wines, for instance. New World wines stylistically, to me, are more fruit forward, intense, and concentrated, and whereas Old World might be more earthy and stuff like that. We need to move on to the next wine, which I see Markus is opening, and I'm opening too. And
let's pop it. That's a good sound, huh?
Yeah, it's supposed to sound like a kiss, not a pop. Mine sounded rather more vulgar. But
yeah, you can see it has a lot of fizz.
There's a lot of fizz, but mine's warmed up. If it was still kept in the fridge, but it's been sitting there for an hour or 2 hours actually.
Yeah.
But we sell an awful lot of this wine. It's a fantastic rosé sparkling wine that you make, and really fun label too. And it's got very fine small bubbles. It's a lovely sort of pink color, you can see there. And then on the nose, excuse me, to me it smells like, do you know those little fraises de bois, very small wild strawberries?
Mm-hmm.
Has that sort of character of fruit. And a little bit of, there's a candy called Tutti Frutti in England. Going, if you get that in America or not, but it's got that sort of wild tropical fruit character. Tell us about this wine.
So this wine is a sparkling wine. It's made Méthode Chamard, so it's tank fermented, and we make it from 2 grape varieties. It's a blend of Pinot Noir and Zweigelt. Pinot Noir is a worldwide known red wine grape, and Zweigelt is Austria's mostly planted red wine grape. And therefore this is a blend of the two, and it's a very fragrant, aromatic style for a rosé. It has it's still brut, but it has a touch of residue sugar, so it's, again, I think it's also a crowd pleaser, therefore it's so successful. Yeah,
it's a definite crowd pleaser, and it's very good value pricing. If you want to have a champagne and you don't want to spend that sort of money, this is just simply delicious. And to get that color, some people may not know that rosé is, the way you get rosé is to macerate the wine with the skin of a grape, so red coloring pigmentation gets into the wine, so you don't obviously steep it for too long because then it would be a red wine. How long do you steep this to get the?
Between 2 and 4 hours maximum.
Oh, that's all. Wow.
Yeah.
Shorter than I thought.
Yeah. So really short, just to have this light salmon color.
It's delicious. I hope if the good thing about this show is that tomorrow it'll be put up online. So if people haven't already bought these wines, they can go back and go out and buy these wines and then come back and look at the show tomorrow when it's online.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
You make some other wines. For instance, I think you are doing spritzers and canned wines, and you even make a wine from my company, Broadbent, and I think we have a label shot of that. There we go, which is in a liter bottle, and it's very, very lovely wine, Grüne Veltliner. Tell us about some of the other wines. I was surprised to hear you make spritzers.
No, we don't make spritzers. This is obviously a misinformation.
Oh,
no.
Do you sell grapes to someone who makes spritzers?
No. I just have a friend. I have a friend who makes a spritzer, and maybe he contacted you.
You have a friend?
Yeah, I have a friend who makes a spritzer, an Austrian spritzer.
Okay, well that's very interesting. Sorry, I'm glad you've cleared that up. Sorry, it had to be on a forum like this. But are you doing canned wines?
No.
No, not that either.
No, not that either.
And how does the Broadbent Grüne Veltliner differ to the other wines you're making?
The Broadbent Grüne Veltliner is from some of our youngest vineyards we have planted and from some great producers, but this is actually the style which people drink as a glass of wine in an Austrian restaurant, you know, like a wine which goes very well with everyday food here in Austria. So yeah. It's a real good restaurant wine.
It's fantastic, yeah. And it's we sell it in America in a liter bottle, so you get more money, more wine for the price. How about visiting the wineries? Do the Viking ships stop in Wachau, and can they visit you, Erich?
They stop, but it's in the beginning of the Wachau and in the end of the Wachau, in Krems and in Melk. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they had a stop in Dürnstein. You mentioned the castle of Dürnstein where Richard Lionheart was kept in prison, but now they stopped just in Krems and in Melk. But there's
so how
good
far,
public transportation, so anyone can pass by and
so if
stop tasting.
If someone jumped in a taxi at one of the 2 locations where the ship stopped, how far would it be to get to you?
15 kilometers from each side, so it's just really close. It's a 10 or 15 minutes ride.
15 minutes ride. And we saw a beautiful picture of your winery. What's really interesting when you visit wineries in Europe is, or people's houses actually in places like Austria, where they're in really, really old buildings, but they're very modern inside.
This is my tasting room.
That's your tasting room.
Yeah, it's a pretty old house. As I mentioned before, we have a really old building with walls built of solid stone with, I think, 1.5 meters thick. So that's just incredible. Yeah.
How would we, and then to get to Traisental, where would people, is the best place to go from Vienna, or how would we?
No, it's actually the same. I mean, where the boat stops in Krems, it's about a 15 minutes ride. So it's also really close.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
It's just on the other side of the Danube, basically.
I'm to the west, he's to the south. So it's just
correct.
And I guess they can do you accept visitors by appointment only, or?
We accept visitors. It's an advantage if they make an appointment to make sure that somebody is here, you know?
Yes.
That's the point, yeah.
And do you have a shop where they can buy wines at your winery?
We don't have a real shop. We have like a cellar door sale, but yeah, people can buy at the winery as well.
They can taste the wines and then buy bottles.
Yes.
And Erich, can they do that with you if they come and visit you?
Yeah, of course. You should bring plenty of time with them, but everyone's welcome.
Yeah, because I remember an amazing story about you, Erich. This is shortly after I met you. So how long ago? When did I first meet you? About 15 years ago or 20?
I think we've met first in 2004. It has been a while.
Yeah, so it's been about 16 years. And I remember talking to you, and you told me about an American who was on a bicycle going past your winery, and he knocked on your door and asked if he could taste some wine or visit the winery. And he was there for something like 5 hours, and you had about 24 bottles.
It's more than half a day. It was fun. He was Canadian, as far as I remember, but he knocked at the door and said, "Okay, pardon me, we can't buy because we're Canadians and we have no permission to take wine with us, but we would like to taste some Austrian wines." And finally, we opened up, I think, 58 bottles. On that day, probably the best tasting of a lifetime. So 58 bottles, yeah.
58 bottles for a guy who is riding past on his bicycle from Canada. That's amazing. Not the greatest wine writer, most influential wine writer in the world wouldn't get that sort of treatment from most places. So that guy was lucky. I hope he became a customer for life.
It's just I like wine tastings. That's my little world, and we opened a lot of ripened bottles. So some bottles were just the last bottle left in the cellar. So it was just I want to open a bottle for my own. It's just always nice to share a bottle. I think this is what wine was supposed to be about: just sharing wine, having a good time, and maybe ending up and having some children. I don't know.
Absolutely. So I have two questions from Florida, San Bruno, where can I purchase your wines in the States? Would love to try these. And then Marlene from York in England, can I get either of your wines in the UK? Do you know which retailers? I'll take a look now, she said. But what are the best ways to find your wines apart from looking on winesearcher.com, which is probably the easiest way to find them?
I guess, or the company website. We have a list of retailers, but winesearcher.com is probably the best way.
What is your website called?
Machherndl.com. Pretty simple.
Can you spell that? Because people are going to want to know how to spell that.
Okay, Machherndl.com.
Okay, and Markus?
Our wines, they are of course available in the United States. I mean, this lovely gentleman here is the importer, so they also will be available in Florida. And also in the UK, we have an agent. It's called Astrum, ASTRUM, and you can buy the wines there. Unfortunately,
for licensing legal reasons, three-tier system in America, that you can't buy your wines from me, but if you go to my website, which is very easy, it's just my last name, broadbent.com, and you go to the info and send a message, I will be sent that, and I will personally answer you and tell you where you can buy your wines in the US. If you tell me what state you live in, that's the easiest. And then Jenny from New York City. Now I wonder if you've asked this question before, because I had this question from, I think, Alessandra Bindi Sagadi had the same question. What are your favorite wines other than your own?
Okay, I will start. I don't have a favorite producer, as I said before. I think there is so much good wine all over in the world. I mean, one of my favorite producers, for instance, from Germany is a gentleman you represent. It's Christian Hermann from the Mosel. You know, he makes spectacular wines. And I think I'd like also to drink French wines a lot. But I also appreciate a lot South African wine since I worked there. So, as I said, if you look, there is good wine everywhere in the world.
Markus? Erich?
I have to agree first, but of course, I have an uncommon palate, and I'm searching for uncommon wines. So I'm not looking for the crowd, please. I'm looking for the weird things. So you're presenting Ibn Sadi, for example. He did a Machherndl in 2011, which was one of the best wines I had in my life. Or Matassa, for example, France. These are the wines I'm looking for. This, clean, crisp, lean, long aftertaste. That's but there's a wide range.
Yeah, I think if I had been answering this question, if I'd been Markus, I would have said Machherndl, and if I'd been Erich, I'd have said Huber.
Okay, sorry, missed it.
You're from the States.
But the next question is from Florence, New York City. Thank you so much for this fascinating presentation. Very inspirational to see these young winemakers. How has COVID impacted your business, and do we need to buy lots of cases? Well, the last question, yes, buy lots and lots of cases. Okay, you can answer that about COVID impacting your business, and Austria, how has it fared in this whole pandemic?
I mean, it has had a strong influence in general on the restaurants in Austria, and since we sell quite a bit of wine to the restaurants, it has affected us. And in total, for our company, we are about 20% down this year in terms of sales. So it really has an effect. But you know, as a winemaker, this is something, honestly, which you're used to, because Mother Nature not every year produces the same amount of wine. So it's actually pretty normal that you have like a 10-20% up and down between different vintages in volume, and that you are limited with sales. 1 year you have more to sell and 1 year less. So it's not a complete, I mean, of course we don't like the situation, but it's not a complete catastrophe. And I mean, hopefully this is not going to last for 5 years, because then of course it's a problem. But if this is going to last for 1 year and hopefully next year it's over, we will get through this.
That's a very good point about the mother nature.
Yeah.
What about you, Eric?
Yeah, Marcus. Yeah, I have to agree. We have a cruel partner, Mother Nature, and of course, COVID-19 is not really fun. Now we can't even do tastings at the winery. That's something causing a lot of pain, because people can just pass by and buy wines, but we have no permission to pour wine. So it's getting weird. And of course, I'm selling maybe 80% of my wines are sold in foreign countries. So sales in foreign countries, especially England, is almost down to zero. So it's a big effect on my company. But we have almost the same numbers like Marcus. So maybe I'm down to 20 or 18% this year. So we're doing surprisingly well this year. So yeah.
Because this show is viewed all over the world, and there's quite a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand who watch this. And so, how many countries do you both sell your wines in?
Can Eric start, because I have to plug in my computer? I have to get a cable. Eric can start to answer.
Okay. I can't give you exact number of states I'm selling to, but it's almost worldwide. It's Canada, United States, Great Britain, Europe. It's even China or Japanese markets. So it's just it's a large number of countries, and I'm a small winery. I'm just own 8 hectares and producing maybe 50,000 bottles or 25,000 bottles per year.
Is it how many different wines do you produce total?
Baloo, this is I'm not an average guy. I'm not a businessman. I'm just a guy loving the wines he's making. So I'm just a large number of wines, and the number is increasing every year. So it's just, we're ending up maybe with 28 different wines on 8 hectares. And yeah. Who cares?
You're an artist. Definitely an artist.
And yeah, it's fine. And I'm doing 8 whites, 8 white wine varieties and 2 reds. So it's just.
That's
and
fantastic.
I've just planted a few vines of Chenin Blanc 2 years ago, just to get an idea what's all about.
Marcus, what's your total production?
We produce about 50,000 cases in total, 50 to 60,000 cases. And we sell to about 40 countries.
Eric, you said you produce Chenin Blanc. There are a lot of...
I'm not producing, I just planted Chenin.
That's really interesting. Why did you decide to do that?
I'm a bit worried about acidity level with Gruner Veltliner, because I got a sense that we are suffering from acidity, especially with Gruner Veltliner, and I just tried to. It's just a small number of wines. It's just 100 wines of Chenin Blanc, just because of the acidity, and just to see whether it's matching in terms of ripeness, whether we can do a blend of or whatever. I'm just curious, because I like the variety, and just curious about whatever we can do with Chenin in the Wachau Valley.
Very interesting. I mean, we could talk about that for hours. So,
I can give you some topics.
unfortunately, we're running out of time. It's been an hour and a half, and we're supposed to only be on for an hour. But I hope that Mika and Montclair enjoyed the extra half hour of watching you guys, and she'll come and visit you. And I just want to thank you both for this amazingly interesting episode on Viking.TV of Wine Wednesday. If there's anything you want to say in closing, now's a chance.
Yeah. No, Erich, go ahead.
I want to thank you at Viking.TV and of course Baloo for the nice evening. I had a lot of fun. I hope to meet you soon in real and spend some time maybe in Austria or elsewhere. Maybe we should meet in London.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, if you or Markus ever come to the United States, you know, I know that Markus comes a lot. Erich, you're less frequently, but if anyone goes to my Facebook, Bartholomew Broadbent, I will always be letting people know when people are in town and when we're doing tastings, or my business Facebook, which is Broadbent Selections. Either way, those give out information, and hopefully, more importantly, people can visit you by jumping on a Viking cruise down the Danube River and have an excursion to see you. I think we need to wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll talk soon.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Oh, and by the way,
Yes.
we've got to give a shout out to James Brismall for the amazing behind the scenes work of getting videos up and things, and then Claire Armitage and Heather Donoghue, who are the organizers behind these wonderful shows. I don't think these shows run credits, so I always like to shout out to them that we appreciate what they do and make our lives easier coming on. And great, that's it. Happy Veterans Day next week. We will be on the following week. The next 3 episodes are going to be interesting. We have one episode featuring English sparkling wine. That's the day before Thanksgiving, Gusbourne, and a surprise celebrity guest who will also be on there. I'm not sure it's been announced yet, so I'm not sure I'm allowed to announce it. Then we have an episode which is, I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with me the whole episode because I'm doing Portugal. I'm going to talk about Vinho Verde, Port, Madeira, and Douro table wines. And then the next episode is going to be New Zealand, the Great Spy Valley Winery in New Zealand, which will be on. And then in December, the last of this season's Wine Wednesday is going to be in Cognac with Camus Cognac. So look forward to seeing everyone, not next week, but the following week. And once again, Markus and Erich, thank you so much. It's been really fun and interesting, and we'll see you soon.
Goodbye.
Ciao. Bye.